Hi friends, it's me, E.H. Ivins, with another edition of A Radical Reset. In this one, in a continuation of what I talked about last time, I'm going to cover steps 2 and 3 in my 3-step program to virtually eliminate crime, or certainly over 90% of it, both violent and non-violent in the United States. And to recap, this is based not only on a lot of statistical evidence, but on the fact that I spent time in prison, and I share that and what I did to deserve that, and I did deserve that, in the preface of A Radical Reset available to you on Amazon. Now, because there's nothing like first-hand experience with criminals to know what causes it. It's not guns, and it's not drugs. Drugs correlate with crime. Now, the price of drugs causes a lot of crime, and I addressed that in the last podcast. But the number one cause of crime, and particularly the number one cause of violent crime, where the school shooters come from, and the synagogue shooters, and the church shooters, and the people who plow into crowds. Putting aside, by the way, this is not a terrorism discussion. Terrorism and violent crime are two completely different things. It is one thing when an Arab terrorist, blows himself up in a square. That's a religious issue. I'm not going to cover that today. I'm not going to get into. I probably will at some point down the road, but that's not going to be today's subject. I'm talking about when Americans of all colors commit crime, whether that crime is a theft or a murder, and in particular when it's a violent mass crime, what is the common thread among most of them? And what did I notice about this, and what have we learned? Well, let's do a little history lesson. In 1959, the percentage of, in particular, and I want to preface this, every time anyone discusses race in America, even in a glancing blow, it becomes some kind of a racial thing. Just listen to what I have to say in context. Please do not leap to a conclusion because I'm going to start by talking about the black community, okay? Just trust that I am not a racist. Bear with me in this discussion. Please do not prejudge. Let's pretend that you are an anti-politist too, and that you don't have a special interest, and you're not trolling for offense, and you're not a professional whiner. Just relax. Let's have a discussion. So, in 1959, the percentage of black families that were led by single parents was 5%. Today, it's 70%. In 1959, the percentage of white households that were led by single parents were almost nothing. Today, it's 36%. Latino families, almost 45%. Asian families, 17%. Every racial group, every religious group has been struck by the plague of single parenthood. And when I say the plague of single parenthood, and again, check this out, I footnote this in A Radical Reset extensively, but here, just Google it yourself. The number one cause of crime is single parent families. Period. When I was in prison, 99%, and I'm not exaggerating, of the guys in prison were the products of single parent families. Now, why is that? I'd like to believe that we're all, that everyone and every mother raising children in a single parent family is heroic, and there are stories of, great single parents, and I know there are great single mothers, and I know that I'm offending a lot of single mothers right now. I've discussed this with single mothers before, and they get offended right away and start telling me how great their kids are, which is a very subjective judgment, and I don't want to get into it. I'm just going to tell you something. I'm sure there are millions of kids who are raised by single mothers who do just great, but we're talking about crime here. And when it comes to criminals, virtually all are the product of single-parent families. And that is the difference and why crime zoomed. In the Great Depression, poverty has nothing to do with crime, by the way. When the poverty rate went to the highest it's ever been in U.S. history until now, which was during the Great Depression, and we had unemployment of over 26%. The nuclear family was intact and crime didn't budge. It didn't go up. Everyone pulled together, mom, dad, and the kids, because absent both a mother and a father, kids grow up rudderless. I'm not going to, again, because I'm trying to confine this to a relatively short period of time, we're not going to get into all the deep sociological reasons and psychological reasons, but the bottom line is no father, kids are fucked. I know we live in a feminized society, and there's nothing wrong with that in some ways, not always. And I know that we tend not to talk about the value of the father, and we almost encourage mothers to leave the fathers. But I'm going to put all of that aside. What I'm going to talk about is step 2 in how to end crime is welfare. AFDC, Aid to Families with Dependent Children. Now, In the mid-1960s, there was a president called Lyndon Johnson, and Lyndon Johnson, LBJ, for those of you old enough to remember him, you know who I'm talking about, for very good reasons, because the road to hell is paved with good intentions, launched what he called the War on Poverty. And the centerpiece of the War on Poverty was AFDC, Aid to Families with Dependent Children. The idea was to help in those days, very small group of single mothers who were also disproportionately poor raise their children. But what it really turned into was the subsidization of single parenthood. And like anything else that you subsidize, you get more of it. And that is why it went from 5% to 70% in the black community, and similarly climbed in every other racial subgroup in the United States, because anything you subsidize, you get more of. We have literally subsidized crime in the United States. Lots of other things attached to single parenthood as well, by the way. Addiction is directly attributable to single parenthood because, again, as I discussed last time, it is the unprescribed self-medication of self-loathing, and kids who grow up without fathers tend to be self-loathing. In fact, every sociological study ever done shows that even a shitty father is better than no father. In other words, even if dad sits at the dining room table, looks at his phone, never looks up, barely grunts when the kids are around, the very fact that he exists in the room is an enormous advantage. Even if dad's a drunk, it's an enormous advantage. You know, look, I am not here to advocate that, for example, a woman should stay in an abusive relationship. Of course not. And I'm not here to say that you have to marry everybody you fuck. But you know, I hate to tell you guys, there is birth control, male and female, readily available in every drugstore in America, cheap, free at Planned Parenthood in most cases, distributed by many school districts. Fucking use it. And if you don't, there has to be some kind of consequence. Because, guys, consequence is the only teacher. The only way any of us learn anything in our lives is by fucking up. Let's be perfectly honest. We don't learn anything from our successes. But I digress. So, beginning with the mid-1960s, we started getting lots of bastards. When I was a kid, bastard meant something other than a bad person. Bastard meant somebody who was born without a father. And our problem today, and where violent crime comes from, and all crime comes from, is, and the root cause of all crime is single-parent families, or what I call bastard square. In other words, that generation of bastards fuck the next generation of bastards, who fuck the next generation of bastards, and the next generation of bastards, to the point now where I believe we're at about the bastards to the 10th power. We have so many bastards running around in America that we don't even think of it as what it really means. And there was a reason for the societal stigma of bastards in those days, because it's a bad thing. I'm sorry, there is right and there is wrong. And this is definitely not going to be politically correct, but being raised by a single parent, generally speaking, is wrong. And the boys are guilty for fucking the girls. And the girls, let's think about this. When I was in prison, I knew plenty of guys that started fucking, and it was the vast majority, my friends, the minute they hit puberty. 13, 14 years old, they already started producing what they called baby mamas. Now, the baby mamas were the girls also raised in single-parent families who were seeking male attention and male approval. So they spread their legs for every motherfucker that came along and had babies because it made them feel loved for some short period of time. And now I have my babies, and my babies love me, and that's what these girls are seeking because they don't have fathers. Get it? The role of a father, my fellow fathers out there, your role in the raising of your daughters in particular is making them powerful women in the world and helping them find out who they are so that they don't need men to feel justified, to feel valuable in our society. But you take away the father. Listen, the roles of mothers have a very important role, particularly in the raising of boys, to teach them how to be nurturing and how to treat women. Believe me, I do not discount the value of women at all. It takes two parents to raise children, not a fucking village, not a government, not a bureaucracy, not any of that other Hillary bullshit. It takes two parents in a traditional nuclear family. I'm sorry, but that's the facts of it. It may not be politically correct. It may not be, what everyone wants to believe. But if you have babies out of wedlock, you are contributing to the breakdown of society. And let me tell you how serious it is and why I draw the connection to Sandy Hook and to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. CNN, which is a leftist political, I was going to call them political website. CNN certainly is a leftward tilt to where Fox is a rightward tilt, right? I mean, all news is subjective these days. Nobody reports news anymore. They spin it. They spin it to the left at CNN and MSNBC, and they spin it to the right at Fox, and then it's up to us to get our news everywhere, read it, and use our fucking brains. And in an anti-political world, when the parties go away, so does a lot of fake news. I mean, there will still be plenty of news outlets, and there will still be some that are left and some that are right, but the mouthpiece of the party, the Republican mouthpiece at Fox, and the Democratic mouthpiece at CNN goes away. But I'm going to use CNN in this example, CNN did a list of the 27 worst mass murderers since the year 2000. 26 of them were the product of single-parent families. My friends, that is a fact from CNN. 26 out of 27. That is not a coincidence. That is a causal relationship. And the one that wasn't was brought up by lunatics, okay? And there are plenty. Now, when I say this, I know that the knee-jerk reaction of the woke and of the left and of the politically correct is going to be there's plenty of shitty two-parent families. Yeah, there are. But they're the exception, not the rule. In other words, the very fact that a single parent is raising a child is in and of itself shitty. I don't care if that single parent is motherfucking Teresa. The absence of two genders, and there are only two genders, my friends. There are not an unlimited number of genders. You can call yourself whatever you want. If we're at a dinner party and someone wants to be called they or cis or whatever the fuck it is, I'll do it. But in reality, there are two genders, and nature has designed it that it takes two to raise a cub. It takes a male wolf and a female wolf, a male gorilla and a female gorilla, a male eagle and a female eagle, and it takes a male human being and a female human being. It is as simple as that, my friends, just as simple as that. It takes two to raise a healthy chick or a healthy puppy or a healthy cub or a healthy whatever. We are just another member of the animal kingdom. It takes both influences to teach children how to be. Fathers teach their sons how to be men. Mothers teach their sons how to be nurturing. Fathers teach their girls that they are powerful in the world. Mothers teach their girls how to be women within the context of their lives and of the nuclear family, and how to raise their children, and many other important things. I mean, God knows. And there are plenty of dysfunctional families. I was raised in a dysfunctional family. My stepfather, Samuel H.K., and that's why I changed my name, because I won't carry that motherfucker's last name. Samuel K. was a malignant pedophile. It started on me from the time I was 5 years old, and I know what it is to live in a dysfunctional family. No one has to tell me what it's like. I've had first-hand experience. Many of the emotional scars that led to my downfall were inflicted by Samuel H.K. And my mother protected him, so they couldn't have come more dysfunctional than my mother. And many of the lessons in life I learned because, thank God, I had uncles and aunts who kind of replaced it. But that's a long story for another day. I wrote a book about that too. It's called The Potato Princess, but I haven't released it yet. I'll release that one day. But anyway, no one has to tell me about the dysfunction of shitty families. I know that incest goes on. I know that beatings go on. I know that there are drunks. I know a lot of things. But I'm telling you that they're the exception, thank God, not the rule. Most families, while not perfect, they're not all, I was going to say Ozzie and Harriet, but see, now that just is, or, I'd say Dr. Huxtable, except he's in fucking prison for hitting on women. Or much more than hitting. Okay, don't jump on me on that one. That was just, me being flip. He's a racist piece of, racist. Fuck me. Sorry, rapist piece of shit. I don't think he's racist because I think he basically fucked over women of every flavor. But anyway, I digress. Whatever the example of the so-called perfect situation comedy family is you want to use, most families aren't that way, okay? Most families have their dysfunctions. But even within the dysfunction of an imperfect family, it is better than no family. Raising the cause of crime, the root cause, and certainly of most violent crime, is single parenthood. Tons of studies have been done on it. There's no contradiction to it. Do your own research, or just read a Radical Reset. I footnote all of this. Now, okay, I've identified the cause. Now, what the fuck are we going to do with it? That brings me to step 3, and I call it weed and seed. Now, before I get to weed and seed, number 1 is we got to stop subsidizing single parenthood, so we have to do away with AFDC. Shut it down. Don't replace it. Don't reform it. Now, if individual states want to do individual things at the local level to help those single parents that are in the most dire straits, then that's certainly fine. And the reason I say leave it to the states, in most cases I say that, is because, for example, California is much different than Arizona, which is much different than Wyoming, which is much different than Maine, which is much different than Florida. In other words, what we basically have are 50 little countries separated by open borders. And every state's population is different and has different density and has different characteristics. And state governments can be much more careful and selective and use a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer at the federal level and design programs, and I would think, in conjunction with private charities, both secular and non-secular, to provide for the truly unfortunate single parents. We don't need to have a federal bureaucracy for that. But we must stop the national subsidization of single parenthood because, again, anything you subsidize, you get more of, and in this case, very bad behavior. Now, by doing that, by stopping the subsidy, we're going to cause, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'll concede it because I'm not a politician, I'm in favor of causing hardship, because that will force, what chance does a child in a single parent family have unless another male in that family steps in? And by taking away the subsidization, other men will step in, or will have to step in. Girls will have to go live with their parents. Their parents will have to step in. Grandpa will have to step in for father. Or we'll have to go back to what we used to call in the old days shotgun marriages, which, believe it or not, were a good thing, not a bad thing. In other words, if you were a boy and knocked the girl up, you married her. It's as simple as that. And I know that's not fair, and I know that leads to, loveless marriages, but life isn't fair. Cut the fairness bullshit. Please do not send me messages about fairness. I fucking can't stand the fairness argument. Life isn't fair. But you make your bed, you lie in it. You father a child, you take responsibility for it, you raise that child. Plain and simple. If you can't, you put the child up for adoption. By the way, I'm not going to discuss abortion very much. I am pro-choice, but I'm not a nutcase pro-choice. And there are lots of people who will choose, even if they're pro-choice doesn't mean pro-abortion, by the way. And I have to be honest, if one of my daughters had gotten knocked up, I would have probably encouraged her to have the baby, because the idea of abortion grosses me out. But that's another discussion for another day. Having said that, as a father, I put both of my daughters, when I say their mother and I put both of our daughters on birth control, or actually had the gynecologist put both of our daughters on birth control from the time they were 16 years old. And we didn't have anything because we had a normal, healthy nuclear family. We didn't make sex dirty. We didn't pretend it was a bad thing. We brought it out into the open. We had open discussions. And frankly, both of our daughters were different. My oldest daughter was something of a wild woman. My youngest daughter, I think, stayed a virgin until she was in her 20s. I mean, but I don't, who knows? But everyone's going to be different. But the fact is, it's one thing to have a baby in wedlock. It's another thing to have a baby out of wedlock. So anyway, cancel AFDC, force families together, force family to close ranks, and force girls, and frankly, in this case, women, generally speaking, in any relationship, and you guys know this is true whether it's politically correct or not, you know that women generally set the sexual tone in any relationship. It's the women in most relationships that decide when and if you're going to have sex. And if the alternative to having a baby is I'm going to end up fucked because there's nowhere for me to get money, it's going to force that girl in most cases to go see a gynecologist, even a poor girl down at Planned Parenthood, to get free birth control, whether it's the pill or an IUD, depending on what they can tolerate, and not get pregnant. And that's a good thing for them, and that's a good thing for society. And it eliminates the abortion discussion, because abortion, regardless of where you stand, should not be birth control. And when they know ahead of time there's no money. Right now they have a baby, they get paid. They have 2 babies, they get paid more. They have 3 babies, they get paid more still. By the way, President Clinton tried to do away with that. President Obama put that right back in. Okay, I mean, the bureaucracy can't help itself. It just has to give the fucking money away. And they were both Democrats. Clinton had a brain, Obama not so much. But anyway, and by the way, please do not tell me, anyway, I'm just not going to go there. I'm not going to get into the relative moral compasses of Bill Clinton versus Barack Obama versus anybody else. I just don't want to get in there. Anyway, not today anyway, another day. So, step 1, rescind AFDC and allow states and or private to step in to help the truly needy, and the rest, cross your fucking legs, ladies. And boys, remember, if you knock up a girl, someone's going to come with a shotgun and make sure that you fucking marry her, as it should be. Step 3, and this is going to be, I saved it for last, the most drastic step of all, is what I call Weed and Seed. Weed and Seed is a program whereby it has basically 3 parts. Part 1, anybody in the United States, male or female, who wants either, in a female's case, a tubal ligation, or in a man's case, a vasectomy, the government will reimburse the surgeon, 100%. All vasectomies and all tubal ligations are free. Now, that in and of itself is no big deal, and don't start screaming, my fellow libertarian types. Don't start screaming. Just stay with me. You're going to like it in the end. Step 2 of Weed and Seed is every single person that gets a vasectomy or a tubal ligation may take a certificate from the surgeon, who will sign it and give it to them, carry it down to any FDIC member bank, and collect $10,000 tax-free. Now, let's stop right here. Weed and Seed is voluntary. I know that as I get into this in just a minute, you're going to scream fascist or some other, epithet, but you can't have a fascist program or a statist program when it's voluntary. So in other words, For most people who want to have children in their lives and want to raise families and are good people, $10,000 isn't that much money, and they're not going to go down to the bank to claim it, and they're not going to get sterilized because of it. But the people that I was in prison with, all those addicts and all those people raising the most dangerous and destructive and disgusting children, would sell their souls for $10,000. They will certainly go down to a surgeon, they will certainly get sterilized, and they will certainly go to the bank to collect their $10,000. The line will be around the fucking block. They will give up their reproductive rights in a heartbeat for $10,000. And that's the point. That's the point. We want them to. Let's come right out and say it. We don't want these people breeding. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Okay? We can't forcibly sterilize them. That is fascist. We can't forcibly abort their babies. That's murder. But we can prevent the whole thing from happening with a program that makes sense. Because I'm neither right nor left. Remember, anti-politism is about what works, and this will work. Free sterilization if you want it, $10,000 if you do it. Now, here's the objections to it. I've already covered the fascist thing. The other is that there are going to be people that don't want to have children that are going to go down and get sterilized and get the $10,000 that aren't low lives and just are going to do it. In particular, I can't speak English. In particular, the gay community, the LGBTQ community. A lot of LGBTQs are going to go down and get sterilized and collect the $10,000. And my answer to that is, okay, we subsidize a lot more things than that. I mean, there aren't going to be that many people doing it, and if they want to do it and they want to collect their $10,000 and get their free government check, as we say in Yiddish, "Sil sei mit Glück," go with luck, good for you, get your $10,000. Let's not worry about it. It's not going to amount in the great scheme of things in our trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. This little expenditure on LGBTQ in particular that go down and get sterilized for $10,000 isn't going to amount to a hill of beans. So let's not worry about it. Let us not throw out the baby with the bathwater. The overall effect of this is going to be a lot of people are going to collect $10,000 and are never going to have a baby, and therefore the future criminals, future addicts, and future mass murderers are never going to be born, my friends, and that is a good thing. Good thing for society, good thing to put that cork back in the bottle to reinstitute the importance of the nuclear family, which brings me to the third part of Wheat and Seed, which is, if you have children over the age of 9 months, I'll explain why that is in a minute, and less than the age of 10, and you're willing to give them up for adoption without recourse, never to be able to take them back again, you can collect an additional $10,000, not per child, for the whole bunch of them. Most baby mamas, by the way, in my hands-on, first-hand experience, tend to have 3, 4, 5, 6, where the average people who are educated and raise their children and go to work and have finished high school and are making a living, they tend to have 1.8 children per family. That's really a true statistic in the United States. But the people that are letting the government pay for it and are basically career criminals and drug addicts tend to have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They breed like rabbits. They're overtaking us. This is why Wheat and Seed is so important, because the birth rate alone will make it so that soon there will be more of them than us, and then we're fucked. So to cut that off at the pass, I'm saying if they'll put up their children for adoption, why under the age of 10? Well, because tons of studies have been done that shows really the age should be 7. I'm being generous when I go to 10. I want to keep it pre-puberty. We have a chance to save some of those kids. Not all of those kids, but say if we can get them away from their shit parents, the old apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and take some of the money we're saving. Remember, through drug legalization, we are going to be saving billions and billions and billions of dollars. Well, one of the things that we can fund with those billions and billions and billions of dollars, which also funds Wheat and Seed. In fact, we're going to come out with a surplus after all of this. I've done the math, trust me. And if you don't trust me, do the math yourself. Even after we do all of this, we're going to be able to build what I'm going to call child care homes. I'm not going to call them orphanages because that brings up pictures of Oliver Swift and, more gruel, please. That's not. I'm talking about wonderful, clean, well-staffed by paid social workers and as many retired grandparents as we can lay our hands on come down and volunteer and help raise these kids in a nurturing and loving environment as much as possible. We will adopt as many as we possibly can out to two-parent families and make the adoption process simple and easy. And as many as we can. When I say two-parent families, this brings me, I'm going to digress for one moment into the two-parent gay family. There have been virtually no studies done as to whether gay parents, or very few, that's not no, but very few studies done, and the ones that have been done, the methodology was weak because it's such a politically incendiary issue. In other words, when you start to talk about two gay parents raising a child, you know, you got to use your common sense. And I am not a homophobe by any stretch of the imagination, although as I talk about this, some of you are going to take it that I am, and I don't know what else to tell you, but fuck you. So here it is. Most gay parents are not Cam and Mitch on Modern Family, okay? And that's my phone playing in the background, which I'm just going to ignore right now because I want to continue to talk to you. This is, again, as I've said in other broadcasts, this is not network news, and that'll be over. It's playing Bach flute concerto, by the way. That goes to tell you my taste in music. Okay, that's over. Okay, now back to what I was talking about. All right, so the point is, Cam and Mitch on Modern Family are characters in a situation comedy. Not all gay families are that truly functional. Listen, whether they are or they aren't, that's not the issue. The issue is, can two men raise a girl, or can two men raise a boy, or two women, by the same token, that is healthy? And I don't know. Common sense tells me no. Common sense tells me you got to have both genders. I'm sorry. There is such a thing as two genders. However, if we have a child, particularly an older child, because the older a child gets, let's face it, they'll be the hardest to adopt. And the choice is leaving them institution or adopting them to a two-parent gay family, then I would say, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. We're going to have to use our common sense on this one, guys. And by the way, Cam and Mitch, their daughter Lily on that show, either she's a terrible actress or they fucked her up because she has the emotional range of a watermelon. I'm just saying. So anyway, by the way, I'm sure she's a nice girl in real life, and I'm not the kind of person that attacks people I don't know. Lily, the actress, whatever your name is, may you live long and prosper. You seem like a nice girl, but your character is kind of two-dimensional and kind of dead emotionally, and that's all I can say. I watched that show. You watched that show. Come on, it is what it is. But the point is, we'll adopt as many out to two-parent families, gay and straight, as we possibly can, given the situation, and using our common sense and our judgment and having a little public debate without special interest and all the woke culture and all that other bullshit. And the ones that we can't, we'll raise within the child care homes. Now, why did I say older than 9 months? Because we can't have breeding for dollars, and I know these people. I know these people because I was in prison with them, and if we have a program that's open-ended on the bottom end, they will start having babies to collect $10,000. So it's got to be a one-time thing that they collect one time for giving up the kids that are over 9 months old, and then they're done. And it has to be one fee for all of them, otherwise they will breed for dollars, my friends, and we cannot have that. That would be even worse. So that's why the 9-month restriction. Why the 10-year-old restriction? Because once a kid hits puberty, they're fucked. I mean, I'm sorry, but the die is cast. Again, I know it would be nice to say there's no such thing as bad children. We both know that's not true. And when they get to be puberty and they've been raised by these wolves, and that's an insult to wolves, they get raised by these creatures, sort of raised. Most of them, you know, life is just not as pretty as all these little stories where they run the story of the heroic mother in the poor neighborhood who raises the one good kid, when the rest of them are fucking wild animals. You gotta, you know, the camera lens, you're looking at me right now and you're only seeing me through the narrow view of a camera lens and what I want to show you. You don't know what's going on in the rest of my home. For all you know, I have bodies strung up behind that wall. I don't. I'm just teasing. I'm just saying that you don't hear the whole story when you see a clip. That's why you can't judge, you know, the guilt or innocence of a person based on a clip. That's why you can't judge anything based on a little snip. So when you see the story of the heroic mother and the kid, you're not following the story for years to come, and you're not finding out what's going on with that kid as life develops, and you're not finding out if they turned into, you know, a fucking serial killer. You just don't know. You don't know what the end result is. And by and large, we do know, by every study that's ever been done, that it's the two-parent family, and that's what Wheat and Seed is all about. Cut off the single-parent family, particularly among the most dangerous elements of the population, voluntarily. We can't be Nazis here. Voluntarily, and then now, here's where the seed comes in. I know the objection to this from a lot of people is going to be they're going to take their 10,000, in some cases their 20,000, and they're going to do drugs with it. Yeah, they are. They're going to do drugs anyway. At least by giving them the money, they won't be breaking into your house. And if we legalize drugs, they wouldn't be breaking in anyway. And if they want to take their $10,000 or their $20,000 and sit in some dark corner and legally use drugs and shoot their heroin and do their meth, they're going to do it anyway, guys. They're going to do it anyway. We might as well make it easy for them, you know, and then strongly encourage them to get treatment and rehab, which will have lots of money to provide, because when we legalized drugs and did away with the DEA and narcs and prisons and all this other shit, we have plenty of money left over to treat these people as we properly should. However, some of them, are going to actually redeem themselves. Just like in prison, while 90% of the people I knew were unredeemable, I used to call them the STDs, sociopaths, transients, and derelicts. But there was a small percentage that were neither any of them. That didn't make any sense. Were none of the above, okay? And that actually wanted to turn their life around, actually got their GEDs in prison, actually went out. Remember, there are three things you have to do as an American in order to be successful in our society. One, you have to finish high school. Two, you have to have children only if you're married. And three, you can't get married before you're 21 years old. If you can do those three things, you will be successful in America. But a lot of these kids come in and they already have 2 and 3 strikes against them. But some actually get their GEDs and try to turn their life around. And for them, this $10,000 or $20,000, depending on their situation, if they have kids or not already, and most of them do, they can start a business, they can buy a truck. Just give you one example. With $20,000, what business could you start? You could buy a truck, a used truck, a bunch of lawnmowers, and become a landscaper. And there will always be a need for, no one's going to automate landscaping, okay? At least not in our lifetimes. Let's not worry about what happens in the next lifetime. They can start house painting business. There's tons of service businesses, pool cleaning, you name it. They can start with that money, and that's where the seed comes in. Or they can take the money, instead of taking a student loan, and going to a trade school and learning how to be a tech, or going to a junior college and taking reasonably priced credits and getting associate's degrees. And I knew guys in prisons that got, in the Arizona prison system, through Rio Salado College, which is a two-year college, a junior college in Tempe, right next to Arizona State. The Rio Salado is a river that runs through, well, it's a dry river, actually, it's not a river at all, but anyway, that runs through Tempe. They got their 2 years degree, and that's what this $20,000 is for. Weed, get rid of the people that should, most of them are just going to piss it away, but so what? They'll never be procreating again. Now, look, you can reverse a vasectomy and you can reverse a tubal ligation, but it costs a lot of money, and these people won't do it. And the people who are of the upper income and made a mistake and got the money and then decided they want to change back later, okay. Again, the enemy of good is perfect. If a person changes their mind, this is a free country, change your mind. Only it's up to you to pay for it. If you want to, it's kind of like a tattoo, you can remove a tattoo, and then if you like it, you can put it back. By the way, I did get a tattoo. Can I just share this with you? This is my prison tattoo. What do you think? It says OG in the middle. What do you think? Jewish OG. Anyway, now, I think it's kind of cool. I actually got it while I was in prison just to prove that I was there, because on the face of it, you wouldn't believe it. But if I decide someday I don't like it, I can have it taken off. And then if I decide someday I want it back, and it'll hurt a little bit, and it'll cost a little bit of money, but that's the way it goes. So anyway, guys, here's the point. Weed and seed makes sense. So let's review what I've covered in the last 2 podcasts, and then I'm going to sign off. Number 1, legalize drugs. That frees up tons and tons of money from a failed drug route that was never a drug war to be able to do the things I'm talking about. 2, cut off AFDC. That also saves an enormous amount of money. Stop subsidizing single-parent families. It takes 2 parents to raise a child. And anything you subsidize, you get more of. And 3, weed and seed. Let's get people at particularly the bottom end of the spectrum, and I know that I'm being politically incorrect and targeting people in a specific part of the economic spectrum. Okay, well then fuck you. I just am. I don't care about fairness. I don't care about political correctness. I don't care about being woke. I'm just telling you the way it is. And if you'd had first-hand experience and had been in prison as I have, you would understand. Let's pay them to sterilize, get their kids away from them, save as many of those children as we can, and then through beautiful, and by the way, these child care homes after 10 years will have no purpose, and then we'll sell them on the private market, recover the money to the back to the government that's paying for them, and or do it in partnership with private, secular and non-secular. Although I myself am an agnostic, I don't like the term atheist because atheists are such assholes. I have no problem with religious organizations, and let's get everyone, except maybe the Catholics, and keeping the priests away from the kids, but that's another subject. And because creepy as hell. Although all 4 of my children went to Catholic high school. I know, Jewish guy with kids in Catholic high school. Why? Because South Point Catholic was the best high school in Tucson, and I didn't give a shit. But that's another story for another day. Anyway, I don't want to digress on anything else. That's the end. You get it. 3 steps. Legalize drugs, cut off AFDC, weed and seed. Do those 3 things together, crime goes to nothing. The streets get so safe you can leave your keys in your car, your front door open, and we go back to a world that once existed. And it did exist, my friends. I remember it clearly, when crime was just a non-issue, and the word school and shooting, or workplace and shooting, or church and shooting, or synagogue and shooting never went together in the same sentence. And wouldn't that be a great world to live in? And that's all I'm going to talk about for today. That's the end of this podcast. Remember to pick up your copy of A Radical Reset on Amazon, whether electronically in download or in the paperback version. Either or, it's fine with me. Be sure to click on the subscribe button. Be sure to click on the notification button. Let's follow, let's join, let's get together. Let's make anti-politism the way things ought and need and will be, and we can do it. And I'll talk about how to accomplish that. I know that a lot of you are saying, yeah, he all sounds great, but this will never happen. It'll happen, because the shit's going to hit the fan, my friends. And suddenly the radical becomes reasonable when the shit hits the fan. Just keep that in mind. Till next we speak. And until then, this is E.H. Ivins, signing off.